Good morning, everyone. I'm Neil Litvak, President of the MSPCA-Angell, and thank you so much for joining us on our very special Giving Day. It is our pleasure to share with you today some of the incredible work and resources of our organization. We are fortunate to be able to feature speakers from our own staff who are also leading voices in their fields of expertise. We're excited to open the MSPCA-Angell Giving Day with Harrison Stenson, Angell Animal Medical Center's Pet Insurance Coordinator. Harrison occupies a position that we created a little less than a year ago, and it is one that you will find in very few other animal hospitals. With veterinary care costs rising and an abundance of pet insurance companies promising solutions, we felt it important to help our clients choose the pet insurance policy that best fits their needs. Harrison, welcome to MSPCA-Angell Giving Day. I know that our online audience will appreciate hearing from you why pet insurance is so necessary and how you bring clarity and unbiased counsel to Angell clients each and every day. And audience members, you may pose questions for Harrison via the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. We will be gathering your messages for a Q&A session moderated by Dana Lawson following Harrison's remarks. Of course, if at any time during the presentation you are inspired to make a donation to the MSPCA-Angell, there is a live link in the chat section that you may use. The chat section either shows up as an icon at the bottom of the Zoom screen or under More. This will not disconnect you from the presentation. Of course, you can also wait till the end of the presentation and go to our website, which is mspca.org. And should you choose to support us, we would be most grateful. So with that, take it away, Harrison.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad so many people are interested in talking about insurance at 10 a.m. in the morning. So I hope you have all had your daily dose of caffeine. I am going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get this started. And I'll go through things as we get there. So I believe this is working. Somebody let me know if it's not, but I'll keep going. Welcome. As Neil said, I'm very happy to be in this, I think, very generally unique position, and really happy to be able to talk to you guys and give you some information. So pet health insurance, we'll get to this in a moment, but financial security and peace of mind are sort of the core ideas here. But first we'll get to me. We'll talk about the case for pet insurance, why we think that pet insurance is something that the vast majority of our clients should seriously consider. Then I'll get to some details about pet insurance, some important terms, some details about coverage, and then I'll sort of go into some more detail about what I do here and how it may apply to you and how it helps our clients. So about me. I live in Brookline currently with my fiance and our three cats. Lawrence is at the top there. He does only have one eye. We adopted him that way. He had a congenital defect. Gwen is there lounging under a blanket, and then Ash is there posing on the couch for us. I am originally from Georgia, for those who are familiar, from McDonough, Georgia specifically. But I've lived in Massachusetts since 2021. I really like it here. Having 4 seasons is actually pretty nice, as opposed to one long summer and one long fall. I began working at Angell pretty much as soon as I moved up here. I actually had secured a position before I even moved, so I knew that I wanted to work here when I was moving up this way. I started with the front desk in 2021. So if you come to Angell Boston, there's definitely a possibility you see me there. I've always had a very deep love for animals. I've always grown up with lots of cats, and my family has had dogs. And I'm just incredibly proud to work for this organization that does so much good in our communities, locally, statewide, even nationwide. I think it is a very special organization in the sense that we take a really holistic approach to veterinary care. Obviously, we have some of the best medicine, maybe the best veterinary medicine you can find, at least in the region, if not the country or the world. But we also have these financial planning resources dedicated to help our clients make sure that they're prepared. I know it's probably generally a topic nationwide that vet costs have been increasing, inflation in general. But I think pet insurance is a really valuable tool to help prepare for that. And being part of an organization that not only can have these conversations, but also has, generously funded donor funds is really special. So I'm very glad to be here. So I'll sort of talk about the case for pet health insurance, why we think most of you should probably seriously consider getting pet insurance for your pets. There are two main reasons: financial security and peace of mind. For the financial security portion, if any of you read the news, I'm sure you're aware that a lot of Americans are having trouble affording most things right now, least to say emergencies and veterinary care. Pet insurance is really there to make sure that you're prepared in the event of unexpected accidents or illnesses that end up costing you hundreds to thousands of dollars. These things can pop up out of nowhere from a seemingly healthy pet. Unfortunately, pets just can't tell us when they're feeling bad, and they're very good at hiding their symptoms sometimes. So it's really difficult to make sure you're financially prepared, because it's not like they often tell you that they have a tummy ache. Some statistics that I think are worth noting: 1 out of every 3 pets receive emergency care every year. That's 33% of pets. That's a very large number. Just sort of wrapping your head around that is kind of difficult. But if you haven't brought a cat to for emergency treatment before, count your blessings. We're glad that you haven't had to, but it is very common, and odds are that you will bring your pet for emergency care at some point during their life. So you really should strive to be prepared for that. According to Care Credit, emergency visits can range anywhere from $250 to $10,000 plus, depending on the severity of the accident or illness. As somebody who worked at the front desk for a couple of years, I definitely saw lots of estimates for unfortunate situations and illnesses and diagnoses that were quite expensive. So this is not just some made up number. It really does get expensive pretty quick once the diagnosis is made, and being prepared for that is important. According to a Harris poll from 2023, less than half Americans have enough saved to cover just $1,000 emergency. And this could be anything from a car accident to a human health emergency. So imagine having 1 or 2 of these situations build up at the same time. $1,000 isn't going to get you that far. And when you have to turn to credit or loans, it's really easy to get caught in that cycle of debt. So I think pet insurance is a really useful off-ramp from that path, just to make sure that you are fully prepared and you're not going to put yourself in a bad financial situation because you want to provide your pet with the care that they deserve. Which leads well into peace of mind. I think, obviously, based on some of the statistics I just discussed, it's clear that a lot of Americans in general have had to make some pretty difficult decisions about what treatment they can afford for their pet. And in our perfect world, that would never happen. Pet health insurance is a really good way to provide you peace of mind in the sense that you can walk into a vet visit knowing that you're going to be able to afford to say yes to the ideal treatment plan. The first thing that your veterinarian recommends, you're not going to have to cross things off the estimate or try to pinch pennies. I think it just generally makes me feel a lot lighter walking into my vet's visits knowing, okay, this is not going to break the bank. I'm not going to be bankrupted by this. Even if something that I wasn't expecting comes up, I'm prepared. And the peace of mind that comes with that is really significant. So I definitely think for these two reasons, overall, pet insurance is something worth looking into. So now I'll get into some of the details. I'll try not to get too lost in the weeds. There's a reason it requires a license to really understand pet insurance, but I'm going to go over some general terms and some general aspects of coverage. So the first term is the reimbursement percentage. This is the amount that the pet insurance covers for covered costs. Generally, this is between 70 and 90%. I have seen as low as 50 and as high as 100, but the vast majority of them lie in the 70 to 90% range, depending on what you select. The equivalent in human healthcare, for those that are familiar, would be a copay. Sometimes that's a set amount of money. With pet insurance, your copay is usually between 10 and 30%. So once the deductible is met, you're paying approximately 10, 20% of the costs, and the insurance company is paying the remainder. I love that pet insurance does cover the vast majority of the cost. It just makes large bills a lot easier to stomach. Knowing that you are only going to be responsible for, the deductible plus 10% of the bill really makes it easier to say yes to treatments that look expensive. The deductible is the next important term. You are probably familiar if you have had any interaction with your own health insurance. This is the amount that you pay out of pocket before the insurance coverage kicks in. These can be as low as $0 or as high as $1,000. Usually it's per policy period, so per year. While the $0 and $1,000 are the extreme, most of them sit between $250 to $500. That's generally what I recommend in that range, because that's a deductible you could easily meet after a single emergency visit or specialty visit. But that's the amount out of the pocket that you pay before the insurance kicks in. The next thing that we will discuss is limits. Limits are something you seriously need to keep in mind when you're looking for a pet insurance policy. Obviously, the reimbursement percentage and deductible are very important, but deciding what the limit is going to be, if any, is really, really important to make sure that you're fully prepared. The first kind of limit and the most common is the annual limit, also known as the policy limit or aggregate limit, depending. This is the maximum amount of money that the insurance company will reimburse to you for covered costs in a single policy period, which is 1 year, 365 days. I've seen them as low as $5,000, even $2,500. That's typically not something that I recommend. You could, if your pet needs surgery or something like that, you could run out of insurance with a limit that low very quickly. I've seen them as high as $40,000 per year or even unlimited. There are a lot of insurance policies that just don't have an annual limit. Those are really great for people who really want to be prepared for the absolute worst case scenario. Not, a necessity though. I think it's very rare for a pet owner to spend more than $10,000 on pet care in a year, but it does happen. Pet insurance is obviously one of those products that you get and hope you don't need to use, but if you do need it, you want lots of insurance to actually be there. The next term is the lifetime limits. These are fairly rare. There's actually only, I believe, one policy that I'm aware of that actually has a lifetime limit, at least available in Massachusetts. This would be the maximum amount that the insurance company reimburses over your pet's whole life, regardless of where you're at in the policy year. The one I've seen is pretty high. It's at $100,000. I don't think that's a deal breaker when looking for an insurance policy. That is quite a bit of insurance, but it is something just to be aware of as you look for policies. And then the third, also rare limit is the per incident limit. This can also be known as the per occurrence or per diagnosis limit. This is the maximum amount that the insurance company will pay for any one incident or diagnosis. In my professional opinion, I think these should be avoided, especially since things that are considered chronic can be considered as one single incident, it really caps the amount of coverage that you could actually get for those issues, and it really devalues your insurance, and it sort of makes it, even if the annual limit is high, if there's a per incident limit that's low, you're not going to get very much out of that policy. So in general, I recommend avoiding those. They are rare. The vast majority of plans do not have a per incident limit, but it is something that you're going to want to ask, or just check up on the website, or if you talk to a sales representative, make sure to ask that question, because those can seriously limit the amount of financial security that you have from the policy. I know that's a lot of information, so if there's any questions at the end, we can go over some stuff. But the next thing I'll discuss is just some general broad strokes rules of thumb about coverage. There are 30 plus different plans available in Massachusetts, so we don't have time for me to break down the differences between each one. We'd be here for a few hours, but broad strokes rule of thumb, this is something you can go off of. So just to start, pet insurance covers accidents and illnesses that aren't specifically excluded from the policy. So that means that pet insurance, as long as the issue isn't actually specifically written as excluded in the policy, whatever the issue is, it's going to be covered, as long as it's an accident or illness. This can be anything as simple as, itchy skin, an ear infection, a broken nail, to something as drastic as cancer or kidney failure or heart failure, or if a pet is hit by a car or attacked by another animal. Everything in that whole spectrum is covered by pet insurance in general, as long as it's not specifically excluded. Each pet insurance policy has a detailed section called exclusions. So I obviously recommend that you read through the policy, and specifically that section, when you are looking into a policy. So for things that are almost always covered, this is the cost related to hospitalizations, medications, surgical procedures, anesthesia, plus the actual procedure itself, medical supplies like IV fluids, that sort of thing, as well as diagnostics tests like blood work, cytologies, biopsies, urinalysis, fecal tests, and the imaging side of things as well, with x-rays, CT, ultrasounds, and MRIs. The vast majority of policies cover all of these things just by default, without having to add anything on or, double check. Like, those things are universally pretty much covered. There are some genres there's some types of coverage that are sometimes included by default with some policies. Sometimes it's an add-on with other policies, and then sometimes it's just not something that a policy will cover. And I'll run through these briefly. This can be emergency specialty exam fees. That's the actual fee for, if you go to the emergency room and there's an emergency exam fee, or if you go to a cardiologist and there's a cardiology exam fee. Plans that cover this will cover that actual cost. There are a few popular plans that just don't cover exam fees. They tend to be associated with the policies that are unlimited, just because they don't want people to abuse that. But it's definitely something, if a pet is seeing multiple specialties per year or is going to see a specialist multiple times per year, is a good coverage to have. It's one I typically recommend. Dental illness is another one that I also typically recommend. This is usually things like periodontal disease, unerupted teeth. Unfortunately, dental procedures can be pretty expensive, especially when extractions are needed. So it's something, especially if you're adopting a young pet before there are any dental issues, I recommend dental illness most of the time. But it's not always needed. If you're getting a new policy for a pet that's already had dental issues, that's going to be pre-existing, so you may not need it. But a few other ones: behavioral modification therapy. This is not training classes. Training is usually excluded, but this is a specific type of behavioral therapy that's recommended by a veterinarian and done by a licensed behaviorist. Also, rehab and physical therapy. This can be things like chiropractic care, or if you've seen those adorable videos on Facebook of a dog or a cat walking on a treadmill in water, that sort of thing. Those are coverages that are included in that. Breeding and pregnancy, pretty uncommon. The vast majority of people don't need this, but if there are any breeders in the room, breeding and pregnancy coverage is available with some pet insurance products. And of course, there's final respects. This is not something that we like to think about especially when we're adopting a new pet and looking for insurance, but final respects coverage includes things like cremation or the cost for the burial itself if your pet does unfortunately pass away. I know this is a large peace of mind piece for a lot of people, just to know that they are not going to have to struggle to pay for that service. Brings a lot of people a lot of peace of mind. So I've heard a lot of good things about that coverage. And then we can get to the things that are almost never covered. And there are a few notable ones. The first is pre-existing conditions. This is a big one. So this is why we recommend that pets get insured as soon as they're adopted, because the sooner they're insured, the sooner you can guarantee that nothing pre-existing will come up before you get the policy. Pre-existing conditions are almost never covered. This can be anything, even from like vomiting or diarrhea. If those symptoms can be later medically associated with a specific diagnosis, it can cause a lot of problems. So it's very important to keep in mind that pet insurance does not cover pre-existing conditions. And if you're looking for a policy to cover the cost for a specific issue after the issue has already come up, it is most likely too late. There are exceptions to that. There are some policies that will cover curable pre-existing conditions after they're cured for a while, or will cover pre-existing conditions after the first year of coverage. But that's the vast minority. Most of them don't do that. Another thing to keep in mind is that pet insurance does not cover routine wellness preventative care. That's not what it's designed to do, because it's modeled after property insurance. It's not going to, property insurance wouldn't pay for your, oil change, right? So this is something, pet insurance is really tailored to cover the accidents and illnesses, stuff that is representative of something that is wrong with your pet, something that is causing them to be outside of their normal state of health. Pet insurance plans do offer some wellness add-ons, some of them. These are not actually an insurance product. It's a non-insurance supplemental benefit, which will cover parts of the wellness costs. You can save some money with these wellness plans. They're usually anywhere from like $10 to $25 extra per month. You can save a couple $100s a year if you make full use of it. So some people really like the convenience of that. Some people aren't really interested. But the accident and illness part is the probably most significant, but the wellness plans can be useful. Okay. And so that's sort of the basics. Stop and take a breath. I think there's obviously a lot more that we could discuss as far as, what pet insurance is, how it works, all the nitty gritty. But if anybody has any questions, we can get to those later. As far as what our program does and what I do here, I'm here to help. So I think we as an organization realized that clients needed guidance about pet insurance. The pet insurance industry is growing very quickly. The rate of pets being insured in America is growing very fast. Excuse me. And we realized that there was a lot of confusion about policies. People didn't know what was covered or where to look. And there's 30 something different brands that are available in Massachusetts. And picking out of 30 different options, I don't know about you, but even just going to an ice cream shop it's hard for me to pick out of 30 options. But when you're talking about, pet insurance for your family member, your pet, like it gets a lot harder. So I think it became pretty clear to us that clients needed guidance and that we wanted to provide a resource for that. And that is me. This position was created in 2023. It is going to be a year old in June or something along those lines. And it is one of the first positions like this in the region, if not the country. We also have taken I think, a unique approach in the sense that I am making recommendations. So I am a licensed insurance advisor in Massachusetts. We don't sell insurance. I want to make that clear. I don't sell anything at all. I have no financial incentive to recommend one insurance company over another one. The only thing that I am interested in is getting the best policy for you and your pets. That is my only incentive. So I think a lot of the pet insurance specialists at other hospitals are probably people that help with submitting claims and that sort of thing. But to have somebody on site that is licensed in advising on insurance, I think is really valuable. And so I'm really glad that we've set up this program and that I can help everybody sort of find the best policy for them. Like I said before, we put you first. You and your pet are the only thing that's important to me. I don't sell policies. I don't receive any commission. I am just interested in making sure that people are prepared for all the vet care costs that come their way. I can also assist with things like, and this depends on the company, but I can assist with things like claims, pre-approvals for estimates or appeals in some cases as well. There are a handful of pet insurance companies that can pay the veterinarian directly. There's a web resources page towards the end, which has our sort of claims how-to document, which has most of the details about that. But if any of our clients or any of our medical staff has any issues with, submitting a claim or needing something appealed, I'm there to help support that. In some cases, I can submit the claim directly to the insurance company. In some cases, I can just make sure that you have the documents that you need to get everything situated. But depending on the company, I'm very happy to help, give some administrative support for those sorts of things. And I think that makes everybody's lives a little easier to have somebody that's really dedicated as the middleman between the client, the insurance company, and the medical staff, because it can be pretty difficult to coordinate communication there. So I'm very happy. I'm just keeping an eye on the time here. Looks like we're about at 10:30. So additional resources. I'll stay on this screen for just a moment so that you can take a picture or write down my contact information or some of the links if you'd like. My email address is insurancecoordinator@mspca.org. Feel free to email me with any questions. If you want any recommendations, let me know and we can start intake. Additionally, my phone number is there. Typically, I will warn you, because of the volume of calls I receive, most of them do end up going to voicemail, but I get back to you as soon as I can. Email sometimes is the faster way to get to me, just an FYI, but if you prefer to call, we can absolutely make that happen. It just may take a little bit longer. Some useful web resources. There is on, www.mspca.org/pet insurance is just some general information. It's sort of the homepage for pet insurance. On that page, you'll find links to our Pet Insurance 101 document. If you want to read that through, sort of explains a lot of the same stuff that I've talked about today. And that is available to you whenever you want for download or printing. We do also have a page just that explains, how to submit claims. And that covers every company that we're aware of. If you have any questions or aren't sure where to go next, I would start there. And if that doesn't answer your question, feel free to reach out to me or your insurance company. But hopefully that sort of gets you situated as far as submitting claims if you are not experienced with that or haven't done it before. And then, of course, there's an FAQ. It's titled "The Ins and Outs of Pet Insurance." If you Google that, I'm sure it'll come up. But it just sort of addresses some additional questions that we maybe didn't have time to get to today or won't have time to get to in the Q&A section of this presentation. But that is my spiel. I'm sorry if I talked too fast. I usually have to fit this into like a 15-minute chat. So having 30 minutes was pretty nice, actually. But I am happy to take some questions. I think there's somebody, Dana here, will give us some next steps.
Yes, Harrison, that was great. There were a bunch of questions. So trying to summarize them, and a few are a little personal. So if they're personal, we'll send them to Harrison, and he can write back to you, or we encourage you to email him directly. One of the first questions that came out was, do you charge, is there a cost of your service for giving your recommendations? So to anyone going in and meeting with you, is the meeting free, or is there a cost to your service?
Totally complimentary. It's absolutely free. We don't charge anybody anything for this service.
Awesome. Lots of questions on pre-existing conditions. I guess the main one is, why do you think insurance companies don't cover pre-existing conditions?
Sure. So pre-existing conditions it is sort of the one thing about pet insurance that most people get hung up on. And I think, number one, it's important to know that if you sign up your pet when they're young and healthy and don't have anything going on, you're not going to have any problems with this. So, and just to make extra clear, from year to year, just because if you already had the insurance, if something comes up after, it's not going to become pre-existing down the line, as long as there's no gaps in your insurance coverage, like you don't, cancel the policy or don't pay your premiums. As long as there are no gaps there, if something is covered, it will never become pre-existing later. But as far as why pre-existing conditions aren't covered, the unfortunate reason for this is because it would just make things incredibly expensive. Because pet insurance is sort of built like property insurance for regulation and legal reasons. If if your car is hit or there's an accident, you can't then go get insurance. If you don't have insurance, they're not going to cover that. So it's sort of the same idea there, where the insurance premiums, your cost for the policy would skyrocket if pre-existing conditions were covered, and unfortunately, that would price most people out of the market. So it wouldn't even be affordable for the vast majority of Americans.
One person just said, I bet you're dealing with some really stressed out parents. Do you personally have social work training?
I don't personally have social work training. We do have a social worker. Their office is actually just down the road from me. So that resource is available to clients if they need it. I don't have any social work training. However, I do have some experience having these difficult conversations and being, number one, I've been in that position myself. When I was in college, my cat had a congenital diaphragmatic hernia, meaning there was a hole in the diaphragm, and some of her stomach was in her chest, which is not where it's supposed to be if you're not aware. And I was a college kid. I didn't have pet insurance. I didn't even know it existed at that time. And they told me, it'd be $4,000. I was like, whoa, I mean, I don't even have an income. So I've totally been there. I totally get it. I know where, sensitivity is required. And I have also, I've worked with the financial assistance team too before. So I'm very used to having the difficult financial conversations.
Great. Somebody asked a question about if you know of any policies of pet insurance, the ones that they seem to find you pay up front and then get reimbursed. Are there any policies that you know of where the insurance covers it up front, or there's kind of you don't have to pay everything up front?
Yeah, so there are a handful of policies, and just for context, for the longest time that was the default case, and it still kind of is. But I believe pet insurance companies are moving more and more in the direction of having direct pay available as an option. The most notable companies that Angell can make that work for in some cases is Trupanion, Healthy Paws, and Pets Best. We are also, I believe, Pumpkin we're working on a direct pay setup thing with them there. But those are the four companies that it's easiest to make that work for. For Angell, because it's just me doing the insurance, we don't have the capacity to do that for outpatient visits. But if your pet needs to be admitted to the hospital and you're provided with an estimate for expensive services, with some companies, we can definitely set up direct pay. Usually there's pre-approval required, and the amount of time it takes that varies per company. But generally, we'll do what we can. It's some companies just don't offer it though.
That's great. Let's see here. It says, what are your thoughts on the usefulness of plans that pay for wellness visits but do not pay for anything else?
So wellness plans, there are a few standalone wellness plans. Most of them are attached to an insurance policy, but that does exist, the standalone wellness plan. For me, you can save money with them if you make full use of it. Again, they're not actually an insurance product. More and more states are making laws, making sure that they're actually the insurance company has to make it very clear that it's not insurance. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people get confused and think that it is insurance, especially with wellness plans offered by some chain veterinarians. They offer wellness plans, and then people think they're buying insurance with that, and then they find out, oh, that was only for my annual. My pet has an illness now, and apparently that doesn't cover it. So generally, they can be useful. I don't think they're as important as the accident and illness coverage. If you have to pick one or the other, I would definitely go with the accident and illness insurance before the wellness. But if you have the financial resources for both, it can definitely be useful.
Great. Somebody is looking for recommendations for any kind of insurance that covers dental cleanings. They're having trouble finding insurance that covers dental cleanings.
Gotcha. So there are dental cleanings. It's usually something that's considered part of the routine wellness care portion. So there are wellness add-ons that will contribute some money towards an annual routine dental cleaning. But as far as the actual insurance itself, if it's just a routine cleaning, that's not going to be covered because it's a wellness part. Now, if there's an illness that requires extraction or something along those lines, that would be covered as long as it's not pre-existing.
And similar, the same person was asking for recommendations for insurances that don't jump the premium annually, so don't continually premium. How you're
so that is, unfortunately, that's most pet insurance companies. As your pet ages, you should expect that the premium will go up. With younger pets, it's a pretty small difference. But as your pet reaches, and in every different breed has its own general average lifespan. But as your pet reaches the latter 33% or 25% of that range, you should expect premiums to go up. With the caveat that the only company I'm aware of that does not include, they call it birthday pricing, that does not change premiums based on your pet's age as they age, is Trupanion. This is really nice in the sense that if you sign up your pet young, usually your premiums with Trupanion stay pretty similar. But if you sign up a pet older with Trupanion, often it's very expensive, and you just can't. It doesn't make sense. So they're the only ones that I'm aware of that don't do the birthday pricing. That does not mean that your premium will never change. It will go up as vet prices go up, or if there's any underwriting adjustments, but it's a much smoother increase than some of the ones that, as your pet reaches 10 years older, plus the chart can go a little up faster.
There's a bunch of questions. I want to be mindful of time, so we'll try to throw a few more out there. One that I'm actually interested in is if you adopt an older dog, how does the insurance determine the pre-existing conditions?
Sure. So it depends on the specifics, and this probably depends on the actual policy too. It may vary. If the shelter has any records, or has the previous owner's records, if there are any, or has any records of their own exams that they've done, they will probably use that as the basis for what is and is not pre-existing. If there are no records at all, usually they'll use the first visit as the basis for that. So the first time after adoption that you bring your pet to the vet just to be checked out for a wellness thing, that's what they'll use as the basis for pre-existing conditions.
And recommendations for, it says that pet insurance is easy to find for cats and dogs, but what do you recommend for avian exotic pets?
So right now in Massachusetts, there's only one option for accident and illness insurance for avian exotics, and that is through Nationwide. If you Google Nationwide pet insurance, it'll come up. Unfortunately, they require that clients call them for a quote, but I do know that generally for rabbits, small mammals like hedgehogs, ferrets, and lizards, turtles, that sort of thing, those plans start at about $20-ish per month. But Nationwide is unfortunately right now the only option. Hopefully, some of these other insurers will start insuring avian exotic pets soon. But as far as I'm aware, there's nobody gunning for that right now.
And then just there's so many personal questions about personal situations with their own pets, but the kind of common thread with them is if you have an older dog or cat and they have possibly a pre-existing condition or anything going on with them, is there any insurance you recommend?
I mean, there are a handful that could fit depending on your situation, depending on your pet's breed, your pet's age, your pet's medical situation. So it's hard to give specifics. So I can't recommend a particular policy. What I will say is just because your pet is older and has something that might be pre-existing, that does not mean pet insurance is not useful. There are a lot of things that can come up that are unrelated that insurance will still be very useful for. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. And I will also say there are some pet insurance plans that have like an age cutoff for new policies. I want to make it very clear that a pet insurance plan, if you sign up, they're never going to just kick you off because your pet reaches a certain age. That's not how it works. But they will decline to start a new policy for some pets past a certain age. There are some that don't have a limit, so you'll always be able to find a policy. I also want to make it clear, and that this is where we can get lost in the weeds with pet insurance, is that there's always sort of a caveat or one more detail that I can mention. But I think it's important to note that your pet's medical history has no basis in whether or not they will give you a policy. So just because your pet has a pre-existing condition most of the time does not mean that they just won't issue you a policy. So just because there is something in there, they'll still give you a pet insurance policy. It just won't cover anything that's pre-existing.
Harrison, this is great. For everyone whose questions haven't been answered or are personal, we'll send them to Harrison and he can write back to you. If you listed yourself as anonymous, I encourage you to email him at insurancecoordinator@mspca.org and he can get back to you. Thanks, Harrison.
Thank you, everyone.
So Harrison, I'm going to thank you as well. That was incredibly informative. And I know I speak for everyone on the line that your passion and your purpose are as inspiring to us as they are vital to the animals whose lives are made better because of you. So we really appreciate the work that you do. And thank you, Dana, for managing our listeners' questions. I think that was a really good session. And for those of you who are joining us today, a reminder that none of this life-saving work would be possible without your support. So if you've been inspired, please make a generous tax-deductible donation using the live link in the chat section below, or go on to mspca.org to make your gift. And again, thank you so much for being part of our mission to create a better, safer, and healthier world for animals. Have a good day, everyone.